Okay, so we pick this lecture up from where we left off last time. So in the last lecture we saw that if we connect a capacitance from VO1 to ground, then the value of that capacitance required to achieve a phase margin of 45 degrees was 324 nanofarads, which is very large, and it is not feasible to create such a capacitance on an IC. So let us see how we can do dominant pole compensation without such a large capacitor. And the answer is we use Miller compensation, and which is, instead of connecting a capacitance from VO1 to ground, we connect a capacitance between VO1 and VO, another capacitance which is smaller. Now what happens is, due to the Miller effect, the effective capacitance due to Cc between VO1 and ground is Cc multiplied by the voltage gain of this common source amplifier, which is a good number. That the voltage gain could be as high as 100 or 200. So now we get a effective capacitance between VO1 and ground, which is 100 times larger than Cc. Or in other words, instead of a Cx, we need a capacitance that is only about 1/100th of Cx connected between the input and output of the second stage. Alright, so let us do equations for this Miller capacitor. So again we say A0 P1 equal to P2. The capacitance for P1 is the capacitance from VO1 to ground, which is C1 plus the Miller capacitance of Cc at the input node. At the output, the Miller causes as capacitance Cc2. C2 was already there. So Cc1, as we recall, will be 1 plus Gm2 Rout2 into Cc. Gm2 Rout2 being the gain of, I'm sorry, maybe I should call this is GM11 in our circuit. So let us call it GM11. So this is M11. So this is GM11 Rout2. Alright. So that is the capacitance at the input side, and at the output it is approximately just Cc. So now from these equations we substitute for Cc1, Cc2, and we can find Cc from this equation. But actually it turns out that Cc does many other things, which actually not many. It does two more things to the circuit which we need to discuss before we do further calculations. So let us discuss what else Cc does. Both are very fascinating. I personally find the first more fascinating than the other. The second is actually more of a disaster, but anyway, we'll come to that just in a minute. Okay, so when we connect Cc, as we know, the dominant pole frequency will become very small, and the dominant pole frequency will be much smaller than the unity gain or the second pole frequency. Now at frequencies close to P2 or the unity gain frequency, which will be much higher than the dominant pole frequency, Cc will become like a short circuit, because the value of Cc is large, the frequency is large, and therefore at high frequency Cc behaves as a short circuit. Now if Cc behaves as a short circuit, then effectively around the unity gain frequency or around P2, the gate and drain of M1 are effectively shorted. That means that M11 becomes like a diode connected transistor. What that means is that the resistance seen at the output node, which was RO2, which was RO10 in parallel with RO11, RO10 in parallel with RO11, now at frequencies close to P2, because gate and drain are shorted, that resistance becomes effectively 1 over GM11, which is of course a much smaller value. Now if it is, this GM11 is much smaller, the pole P2, which is basically the capacitance at the output node, which we have called how much? C2 plus Cc2. the resistance seen by C2 plus CC2 is no longer the two parallel combinations of two ROs. It is 1 over GM11. Which RO2 has become smaller, P2 has become larger. Alright, so CC does two things. It reduces the dominant pole frequency and it increases the second pole frequency. This effect is called as pole splitting because the poles are being split in opposite directions. This is a nice thing, of course, because it increases the bandwidth, because P2 is effectively the unity gain bandwidth and pole splitting causes the unity gain bandwidth to become larger. Alright, so let us now do the equations including the effect of pole splitting. So we say with pole splitting, what we want is that the gain bandwidth product be equal to the second pole, where both the first pole and the second pole are modified because of the presence of CC. So we call them P1C and P2C. So A0 is GM1 Rout1, GM11 Rout2. P1C, the dominant pole including CC, is Rout1 into the capacitance at the node VO1 plus the Miller capacitance due to CC, which is CC1, which is 1 plus A2 into CC. The P2, which is the pole at this node, now has a resistance of 1 by GM11 as we just saw, and the capacitance at that node has to be calculated with CC short circuited. So if we short circuit CC, then we get the total capacitance at this node plus the capacitance at this node, because now CC is short circuited. And so that C2C turns out to be C2 plus C1, which are the capacitances at node VO and VO1, minus the Miller capacitance due to CGD11, right? Because now CGD11 is short circuited due to CC. So C2C is the capacitances at these two nodes added minus the Miller capacitance of CGD. Alright, so that is C2C. And C2 is written here also. So we get this expression, and now we can cancel GM11, cancel Rout2, and then solve, substitute all of these, and then we will solve basically for CC. So that is here. So we get GM1 Rout2 divided by C1 plus CC1 equal to 1 by C2C. And we cross multiply. So we get G1 EM1 Rout2 into all this equal to C1 plus 1 plus A2 CC. CC1 is 1 plus A2 CC. And this we solve for CC. So we get this big expression. And if we put in on our numbers, the numbers from here, these numbers 3 milli, 300k, 10k, 2 pico, 0.4 pico, then where are we? We put all these numbers and we get CC to be 1.3 picofarads, which is of course a much smaller value than what we had got for CX, which was 324 picofarads. By the way, I have put this 1 pico here as the value for 1 plus A2 into CGD11, which I had not mentioned before, but that is okay. This is just an approximate calculation. So I make that comment here. So okay, so we found a value for CC. The comment I make is that this expression for CC is actually very approximate. It is just to give us a sense of what the value is and what it depends on, and this will give us a starting value when we want to compensate an actual circuit in SPICE. What one does is uses this value to start, and in SPICE you just do some trial and error until we get a phase margin of 45 degrees. Now the reason this is approximate, there are many reasons actually why this is approximate. To mention one or two, one is that we assumed that the resistance at this node is 1 by GM11. But that is only assuming that CC acts as a complete short circuit at the unity gain frequency, which is not really or necessarily true. CC is somewhat of a short circuit, and therefore the resistance at this node is close to 1 by GM11, but more accurately it is somewhere between 1 by GM11 and RO11 parallel RO10. And so that is an approximation. The other is, of course, again, because CC is not entirely a short circuit, the actual capacitance at this node, this C2C, which we've written as C2 plus C1, all that is also an approximation. Okay, that is a second. More fundamentally, we are using this poles at nodes concept of Razavi, which itself is a serious approximation. We actually should write the derive the complete transfer function and solve for CC. All right, so for all these reasons, this is only a very approximate expression. Okay. The other thing that CC does is that it introduces, well, it doesn't introduce, it causes the zero caused by the capacitance connected between the gate and drain of M11 to move to a much lower value. You remember that a capacitance like this, and originally there was only a CGD here, caused a zero, and that zero was at minus S CGD divided by GM11. You go back and look at the zero calculation. It was a SCGD by GM11. Now, if CGD is small, then this zero is at a very large frequency and it doesn't affect, as long as the frequency is much larger than P2, it doesn't affect the phase margin. But now, because of CC, that capacitance has become much larger. And so the zero, which is GM11 over CZ, has become much smaller. All right, and that is not a good thing. Why is it not a good thing? Because this is a right half plane zero. There is a negative sign here. All right, when there is a negative sign and then we are trying to do a Bode plot, we'll replace S with J omega, and then the phase contributed by this term, by this zero, will be tan inverse minus omega CZ by GM11. That's a negative sign. A negative sign causes a phase shift that is negative, and that is the same sign as a pole. Therefore, and this is called a right half plane zero because this is a negative sign. So the zero is in the right half plane. So right half plane zero causes the same phase shift. The sign of the right half plane zero phase is the same as the sign of a pole, left half plane pole, and therefore this degrades the phase margin because you have a zero close to the unity gain frequency, which is in the right half plane. The phase becomes more negative, and so the phase margin becomes more negative. This is not good, and this can in fact cause the phase margin to remain poor in spite of Miller compensation, and that's why I call this a disaster. By the way, remember, one way to make this zero frequency larger is to make GM11 larger. So one does do that, but usually that is not sufficient. Okay, so let's look at three Bode plots of an op amp. So this is an op amp without any compensation whatsoever. So let's just look at it briefly. So there is a nice gain of some 108 dB or something, and it is falling, and at 0 dB, so that's here, the phase is negative. So the phase margin is negative, right? Because the phase at low frequencies is 180. So this number in fact directly gives the phase margin, so it's a minus 20 degrees. So this op amp is unstable, as we expect. It's a high gain op amp. Now if we connect a Miller capacitor across it, some reasonable value of Miller capacitor, then you can see that the dominant pole has moved below 100 Hertz. I have not shown it here because I wanted to show this clearly. Near the unity gain frequency, which is here, there is a zero. This flattening of the Bode plot clearly represents a zero. This was a dominant pole bringing down the Bode plot at 20 dB per decade. Then a zero occurs and the gain flattens out. And this is a right half plane zero caused by CC. And so the phase, so what is the phase? Let us see at 0 dB. The phase is somewhere here. So it is okay. It is about 25 degrees, which is not good. And that is because of the zero. If the zero was not there, this gain will just fall and the phase would have been 90 plus 45 due to the P2 here. So this is not working because of the zero frequency. Alright, the additional phase beyond 45 degrees, the additional phase up to 20 degrees is due to the right half plane zero. Now here is another Bode plot which has RC Miller compensation, which we'll talk next. And now at the 0 dB frequency, if you look at the phase, it is 60 degrees. Alright, so that is a nice phase, 60 degrees. Alright, so let us look at RC Miller compensation. So what it turns out that if we add a resistance in series with the compensation capacitor, the Miller compensation capacitor, then that modifies the position of the zero, but it does not affect the pole positions too much. And so this allows us to play around with the frequency of the zero. So let's talk about it. So the zero frequency now with this RC is 1 over CC into 1 by GM11 minus RC. So if RC is not there, if RC is 0, then this is the GM11 by CC with a positive sign, which is a right half plane 0, which we had earlier. When we include RC, there is a negative sign here. So by adjusting RC, well, if we make RC larger in magnitude than 1 over GM11, then the 0 goes to the left half plane. Alright. So this is what is done to reduce the effect of the 0 caused by CC, and this is called as RC Miller compensation. Let us talk about this for a couple of slides. So this is a generic transfer function to which compensation is applied, and I want to focus on the 0. So this ZC is this ZC which includes RC. And let's say there are 3 poles, and let's say with compensation we have moved P1 and P2 has moved also because of pole splitting, and let us say P2C is the unity gain frequency. Now we can adjust the value of ZC because that is in our hands, because we can change RC and make ZC whatever we want. Okay, I'm sorry, what should this be? 1 second, let me think. This should be minus. The way I have defined ZC, this should be minus. So that is consistent with the definition of ZC. Alright, so now if we make RC greater than 1 by GM11, then this ZC becomes negative and we'll get a 1 plus S by the mod of ZC. And if we adjust the value of RC such that ZC is equal to P2C, the compensated value of the second pole, then, so maybe I should do this actually. Let us call this P1C and let us call this P2C. Alright, so that is easier to see. Alright, so now we say this is our transfer function after we have connected a Miller capacitor and as well as a Miller resistor, and ZC is negative. Then if we make ZC, the magnitude of ZC equal to P2C, then the numerator and denominator will cancel, and then we'll be left with A0 over 1 plus S by P1C into 1 plus S by P3. These two cancel, and then the unity gain frequency becomes P3, which is much larger typically than P2C. and therefore we get a much higher unity gain bandwidth. This is very beautiful and it is very attractive to do. Unfortunately, it doesn't work in practice. The reason it does not work is that achieving exact equality of two quantities in electronic circuits is very, very difficult. It is actually impossible because Zc depends on GM11 and GM11 will vary with temperature, process. Rc will also vary with temperature and process. So Zc itself is a strong function of process and temperature. P2C is also a strong function of process and temperature, and therefore to ensure that these two are always equal as process and temperature vary is basically impossible. Therefore, although this looks very nice mathematically, in practice this is never done. This process is called pole zero cancellation. This is not done in practice. Alright, but it's good to know about and good to know that one should not do it. Alright, so what is done? So let me mention this. What happens is, let us say we design a circuit to make them equal, and then due to process and temperature they are not equal. This P2C and Zc are not equal. They will not be highly unequal, they will be somewhat unequal, and when a pole and zero are slightly unequal from each other, they cause what is called as a doublet. Right, and that doublet causes a poor frequency response, and Razavi has given this as a problem, and I would like you to go through this problem and solve it. It's not a difficult problem, but you'll go through the mathematics and inverse Laplace transforms and all that to understand how a doublet affects the transient response. Actually, I should say not just the frequency response, but the transient response of an amplifier. So please solve this problem. Okay, so what is done? We can't do this. So what we do is the much more robust way of getting rid of the right half plane zero is to make the RC such that Zc moves to the left half plane and it has a very large magnitude. Alright, and as long as it has a very large magnitude compared to P2, so it is far to the right on the Bode plot. It has a frequency much larger than the unity gain frequency. Then it stops affecting the phase margin, and then one gets a good phase margin because of the dominant pole compensation. Alright. Now, how to determine RC? One can actually go through the mathematics, but again the mathematics tends to be extremely approximate, and therefore the best thing is to find RC in simulation. And the way one goes about it is, so you will start with a very small value of RC, a few ohms, and then you increase it slowly, and you watch how the phase changes as RC changes, and the phase as well as the phase margin, and you'll see that as you gradually increase RC, the phase margin will gradually increase. It will reach a maximum, and then if you increase RC further, the phase margin will start reducing again. So you want to, so you think about why that happens also. So you want to choose a value of RC that gives you a nice phase margin of about 60 degrees or so. So you will in fact do this in assignment 4. Alright, that is the end of this lecture. With this you are ready to do assignment 4, and in next lecture we will return to chapter 9 and go back to op amp considerations.